Hello and welcome, beautiful people. Welcome to a new Tuesday, March 11th, 2025. And we're focused on a digital world weekly town hall meeting. We do have a live audience from around the world. Grateful for their attendance, their involvement, their commitment, and for all that they do to help guide and direct this endeavor, along with the many others that are also involved. For those that need a reminder, we will be focusing on what's happened over the last week, whether it's technology or strategy or partnerships or synergies or just any kind of advancement. And then we'll go through any kind of Q&A that anyone would like to discuss. As a reminder, this is a private membership association. We're grateful for those that help from a moderation standpoint. And this private membership association does constitute elements of forward-looking comments or elements that we may be discussing. As a reminder, we're focused on combating secret combinations that are in different parts of the world, whether that's in technology, which we primarily focus on, media, health, pharma, insurance, whether it has to do with oils or energy or you name it. There's a lot of secret combinations that basically work in cahoots to take over governments. And those governments have ecosystems that then basically get controlled from the inside out, such as monetary systems and treasury systems, which we hope to see a little bit of clarity on over the next coming weeks and months here. But those private secret combinations that work in cahoots, this is something that people are starting to figure out as being is real. It's viable. It's reality. And yet we've been doing this for many, many years, helping society to be able to play to a puck where society is not enslaved. And decentralization is really the key to be able to enable that for all of humanity, for future generations, and hopefully for our generation. The goal is to find a nice balance. And as a matter of fact, this last week I had an opportunity to speak with Gerald, who's and his other half as well, Kathy, from the GBA, the Global Blockchain Association. And they also help with the same type of a goal that the digital world has, which is really finding that common balance between government and freedom and helping technology to intelligently organize in such a way where humans can actually have that freedom. One of the ways to do it is all around identity. So the individual owning their own data and their own identity, and then basically having derived keys that ties from that not only is 12 words, or in this case, 24 words, but it's a part of who they are, physically who they are, and then possibly a part of who their connections are or their contacts are. The real goal is to bridge the digital and physical worlds through decentralization and sustainability as a long term. This last week, we had the opportunity to spend some time in DC and be among some of the best. Literally, when you look at some of these organizations and companies, to be able to be involved with just leaders in the category, whether it's around, policy, or whether it's around implementation, whether it's around technology, whether it's around venture that is behind it. It was just a very humbling and great opportunity to be able to be listed among some of these folks. But it was also eye-opening and in many ways concerning. Some of the things that we saw was a lot of people really don't understand. They don't understand what decentralization is versus centralization. And I know that's a simple concept, but in all reality, when people talk about blockchain, they lump it all in the same category. When they talk about Bitcoin, they do the same thing. We had an opportunity to meet with some new folks and some folks that are old folks. So this is some wonderful folks. This is actually an original whistleblower from Facebook that basically was involved in a lot of the elections many, many, many years ago. I won't go through all the details, but she's all about owning your own data. And I did a couple videos with her probably 4, maybe 5 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. Maybe it's not that long. Maybe it's about 4 years ago. One of the opportunities we had is to be measured both in the native environment around decentralized, private, and permissionless, not permissioned, but permissionless chains, as well as independent. And then also touching on some of the elements of silver and gold backed assets. We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between native and clear as it relates to silver and gold and some of the things that are transpiring. We do have a key meeting this week on Thursday, coming off of key meetings from the prior week before DC within a couple different exchanges, as well as mints, as well as full-on factories that basically build the actual gold and silver assets. So with that being said, this is just an interesting chart to be able to visually look at the blockchain landscape and how everything is kind of coming together, seeing clear as a solid player within, not just US, but global assets that has a lot of viability when it comes to speed and costs. One of the other things that's really telling that has been, what I've talked about over the last probably 90 days, maybe 60 days, is around how the things that are going on with all the different departments is not specifically just an audit. It's actually using technology to look at the flow of funds to actually be able to put it in, whether it's directly or auditability within chains. And Palantir is a technology or a company, the Palantir Foundry, which is actually a Peter Thiel company. He helped start that. He also helped start PayPal along with Elon Musk, and he's very well connected to JD, which has tons of just different conversations in and of themselves. But what's happening is basically looking at the flow of assets and not only tracking where and how and why and what, but also being able to look at the data from a very large model perspective. And when you take that and you link it into the future of payments. So for instance, if you stop paying people, either the people that shouldn't be paid may raise their hand, and the people that should be paid may raise their hand. They may do it in a different way, but irregardless, I believe there's going to be a massive amount of, I'll actually say fraud and corruption that is still going to continue, but a large portion of it, I think, will actually be shut off. And it's interesting to see some of the pushback that's happening, both internal to the U.S. and external to the U.S. and with individuals, and whether that's with Elon or others. But it's been an interesting road over the last couple of weeks, to say nonetheless. We've got attacks and dealerships and vehicles and burnings and interesting things that's being pushed back. But when you really look at what's happening, in my opinion, there's a lot more that's going on under the scenes other than auditing and balancing the books. It will tie directly into assets and assets exchanges. When we talk about exchanges, there's a couple advancements that we've been able to make within the digital world environment, particularly around digital life. So if you haven't used that pops off of the digital world interface when you log in to be able to see your assets in real time. You'll also be able to see them not in this view this way, but if you have multiple different wallets. So if you've got a Hawaiian wallet, an American wallet, let's say there's a different type of wallet, you would be able to actually see all of them and then exchange all of them within that interface. So the wallet system tying into an exchange interface, which is actually this, where you can actually move assets around, are some of the advancements that we're currently in active development on. One of the big topics that I'd love to discuss with this body and really just bounce off of you, there's an action that's come out of this last week where the United States of America will basically adopt as a form of value of assets as BTC. So there's about 200,000 Bitcoin that were confiscated through means of legal possession in some form or another, and we're hoping that that was the case. For those of you that are aware of Silk Road, some interesting history there. And what people don't really understand is there's logs with all of this. And when you can prove a certain data point, you can also prove a chain of data points. And I think that's, a lot of people that don't understand blockchains, other than Monero, blockchains that basically have an element to them of traceability. But what you're seeing here is digital BTC from the digital world, DBTC, being able to have a trading pair with BTC where it basically converts 1-to-1 at whatever the fair market price is at that time. And the exploration of creating, whether it's a form of a credit union, not specifically a bank, but a credit union, as well as and or a treasury. So imagine a treasury or a credit union being able to act as an iterary environment where if someone puts a BTC in, then a digital BTC can basically be exchanged, so to speak, or issued. And if there's one that's issued against it, then value should be provided. So I'll walk through some of the use cases and then we'll talk about the value provided. So digital BTC being able to be exchanged for BTC at the then fair market value. What about digital BTC being able to be exchanged for native at the then fair market value and conversion price? And then the same thing with Clear, same thing with Dala, same thing with digital USD, and then change that from digital USD now into assets within the digital world. So homes or autos or bikes or rides, or, we're basically talking about any of these types of things, but being able to be exchanged in real time and or at time of service. So those are the core parts of the things that we would love to discuss this week as the United States of America comes off, basically focusing in on Bitcoin as a Federal Reserve asset, which I believe they'll also lump in with gold and possibly silver within the audit that they're going to do on hopefully, Fort Knox. And hopefully that happens within the next 30 days or so. So with that being said, those are the primary advancements this last week. I'm going to go ahead and turn the time over to anyone that has questions or thoughts or comments or wants to dig into any of these topics any further. The time is now yours. It's an exciting week. Any thoughts, feedbacks? It doesn't have to be related to what we talked about, but to get fiat in, you basically can use a credit card if it's under 10,000 to buy forms of silver and gold. Okay. And if it's over 10,000, there's usually a process to go through from an accredited investor standpoint. And it's actually a very simple process, and that will actually tie to some of the investment type capabilities. So, and I'll pull those up before we actually move on, but the ability for someone to invest into an asset in the digital world, whether it's an equity, a commodity, a currency, you name it, from anything around, and they could even buy products too. But usually when you're buying products, you're also consuming, and you're doing it in such a way where, the value is basically being pulled or rinsed out of it per se. So I'm going to go ahead and share a screen here real fast. And this is another way. So this is basically people coming in and purchasing different assets. So for instance, this is what we call a float, where this isn't a public company on a NASDAQ, but it can basically sell ownership within its business and or different products or different assets, whether it's, a different technology or maybe a product here, or maybe an innovative new disruptive offering. But you basically, if you're an accredited investor, you can come in like this, or you can basically come in through a purchasing process and purchase similar assets such as these. There'll also be native coins, which are actually going to be respective of, here, I'll see if I can show you an image of some of the ones that we worked through. Oh, maybe I didn't pull it in. But for those of you that were here a couple weeks ago when we went through the actual factories, I don't know, they're not even here. Dang it. Well, so basically, you can invest in companies if you're an investor. You can purchase product if you're a consumer, such as silver and gold. And then there'll also be different kingdoms or countries or jurisdictions that people can come in within the respective currency. So maybe it's the Hawaiian dollar or the digital, so we've got the American Republic environment for the digital US dollar. And that is not the digital or USD or the dollar per se. It is a digital format of it that basically is representative in similar assets. And then, Mexico and similar ones. But these are not the country per se, but they're digital formats of the assets within those environments. So Canadian, Ethiopian, Mexican, American, Hawaiian, those types of environments. Does that answer your question, Danielle? That's a good question. So what you would do is usually in the crypto world, they're going to have some form of a trading pair that goes into BTC. And that is the value of the BTC trading pair into these different environments. So if you go BTC to digital BTC, then you can go back to native or to clear. Does that make sense? Or to dollar. No, that'll be inside of the digital world. And that's what we've basically been building with the digital treasury and the digital exchange, which these digital assets will be in real time. And this is why there's major reasons why this is happening. One, what happened with the Trump administration, especially from my perspective, has been eye-opening. Not only, it's good that they're moving forward with embracing technology, especially cryptography, but it's eye-opening that they really don't understand the dangers associated with the slavery that will come when you take an identity and make it public and then link that to a chain or a blockchain system and then link that to a governmental environment. We're talking about the future of slavery at a level that humanity's never seen. And so the digital world enables really the individual's identity to be obfuscated and private so that the chain and the identity don't link together. That's what the derived keys, what we looked at up here, that's what this is all about. That's why we go over it every week. These keys and derived keys are imperative for the future of humanity. It's not just a normal chain that has an encryption key. Like for instance, and I'm actually going to show folks exactly what this is. So I'm going to log into the digital world. I'm going to grab my phone. I'm not going to use a username and password. I'm going to grab a interface. I'm going to go over to all my Clear apps. It's checking for an update. There must have been an update, so we'll let that update. Then I'm going to scan a QR code. My derived keys are connected. My finger's on it. 5-factor authentication, the most secure way to communicate or get into an environment. Now I'm in. So I've logged in. Let's say I want to add a company. I can do a simple click here. It'll pull up a scan, same type of thing. It's just like how I logged in, but instead of logging me in, it gives me a successful ability to create a derived key within the digital world. Now, that will actually tie to the actual business. So let's say that someone wants to go to the businesses and kind of see what businesses are out there, okay? So they could come in and see them and dig through the details. Let's go ahead and go through a different environment. So let's not use the digital world, but let's use one of the jurisdictions within the digital world, the Hawaiian Kingdom. We'll go ahead and do the same thing where we log in here. And again, no usernames, no passwords. These are all secured every time that it happens. These, not only the QR codes, but all the other things are all changing and ever changing. So you can see different assets here, physical assets as well as digital assets. You can send and receive and exchange, just kind of like the interface that we just walked you through. But this is a good example of how you can go and exchange when you're inside of it. So let's say that there's a Hawaiian dollar, you want to trade it in for a different asset, let's say maybe native, and there's an exchange rate. The ability to basically set this up and materialize this is what we're actually working through the details of. So that's what we're currently focused on. And this is inside the digital world. I'm going to make two distinct, unique differentiators. These transfers are real time and they're owned by the user and the user only. There is no fees to them. There is no government. There is no bank. There is no delay. And their identity isn't compromised. So the way that that derived key worked that we just did here is a good example of how that worked. So I hope that answered your question. Did it? We're getting a lot of feedback. I think it might be Richard. Richard, can you move? Here, I'll see if we can help you. There you go. Let's see. Thanks. There we go. Richard, welcome, welcome. Danielle, go ahead with your question. I'm so sorry. Richard, I'm going to go ahead and mute you, bud. There you go. I think we're good now. Go ahead, Danielle. So there's two parts to this. If you wanted to live totally off grid, you could basically transfer it just like people do with Bitcoin. But with this medium is you can actually transfer in real time with no fees and your identity obfuscated, which with Bitcoin, there are nominal fees and there is a massive delay up to 10 minutes. And then the identity side of it, when they're rolling it out at scale to be able to speed up some of the transaction speed, they're basically centralizing decentralization, like specifically what they're doing with the Lightning Network. But to answer your question directly, you could come into an environment and have a digital asset. I think your analogy was someone you wanted to go to the store and buy eggs. And if you maybe No, you are. You absolutely are. And what it comes down to is commerce. So we went to a couple different departments, the Department of Interior, Department of Treasury, and the Department of Commerce, particularly around the same facet, because he who controls commerce, basically merchants and customers, the transactions that they're agreeing upon and the medium that they choose. So they can choose to use Bitcoin today, or they can choose to use marbles, or they can choose to use US dollars, or they can choose to use a digital asset in the digital world, maybe digital US dollars, or Hawaiian dollar, which this is representative of. And so if a merchant is willing to sell you eggs or fuel or a phone on those different currencies that are in the digital world, you can basically transact and in real time. So let's say that the merchant is only agreeable to say, by the way, there's about 2,000 merchants right now in the well, I guess it's worldwide, that are willing to actually use gold as a form of transaction. So what we've done is we've worked with some of the vendors that are willing to take digital gold and link those together, which, by the way, massive advancements in the state of Utah, where that is becoming a reality. Not only is the state of Utah, as well as the state of Wyoming, buying physical assets and then storing them as a part of. So in Utah, we actually have a budget surplus. So we actually have more money than it's costing to run. And so we're putting money away every year. And in effect, what they're doing is they basically are using hundreds of millions of dollars to purchase silver and gold. The next step will be, how do you use that? Because in the Constitution of the state of Utah, when they were originally formed in statehood, they added in that legal tender was silver and gold, as well as the US dollar. And so merchants not only can pay their bills and their taxes and other things, but they can basically use these assets to barter with. Now, that doesn't mean everybody's bartering with it. There's only about 2,000 vendors that I'm currently aware of that will actually take gold for their products. The Clear companies are one of them, or a couple of them. But if they will take digital gold, then that can be converted from digital dollars or digital BTC or any of these other assets in real time. So the key is to be able to get to a medium where things can be transferred with no fees, with no delays, and with no identity obfuscation issues. When you check those three boxes, that's where this digital world becomes very, very real, even in a society that doesn't understand what is really happening when we talk about policy or structure. Now, I shouldn't blatantly say that, because I really believe there's good faith and good intent in trying to figure it out. But in all reality, I even had somebody just yesterday tell me, Mike, I'm too old to figure this out. And even if I wasn't, I don't have the cycles and time. I believe in where this is going, and I just trust these people to make these decisions. And in my mind's eye, I look at this and I look at it, it's really not that complicated. And maybe I'm just too close to it. But I see the youth picking up and just running with this. And one of the marketing campaigns that we're exploring is a very interesting one, which I won't go through in this call, but your question is one that's common. And imagine if it was actually easy for you to start doing it, then I think it would be commonplace for you. For instance, a close friend of mine, I hired this gentleman from Dell and moved him from Texas to work with a company named Direct Point that we started, that was around managed services, that did centralized IT, that also helped us to really understand why decentralization is imperative. It's just imperative. And the centralized computing models were all just wrong. But he actually put about 50,000 into Bitcoin when it was sub $1. And the amount of, I won't even tell you how many hundreds of thousands he has, but the point that I will say is he funded a movie around the world on Bitcoin. And it's exactly what we're talking about right now. I'll see if I can find it. Around the World on Bitcoin. Let's see what year it was created. I want to say it was, let's ask some technology here. So 2015, no, that wasn't it. It's not finding it. Could someone try and search this for me? I thought it was called Around the World on Bitcoin. Yeah, this is actually a really good documentary. There was actually a couple here in Utah that just got married, and he funded them to go all the way around the world in a long time ago. Like it was well over 10 years ago. No, it was kind of a documentary. I don't know who the actual producer was. This guy that I'm telling you about was the funder of it. Wally, can you help out there? I think you understand what I'm talking about. But we'll go ahead and take the next question while we're trying to find you an answer there, because that's actually, I think it's actually something that you can watch without paying for as well. But basically, there was no Bitcoin ATMs, there was no vendors that took it, there was no landlords that took it, but they talk about like the first pizza. I mean, the first pizza was 20,000 Bitcoin, if I remember right. Maybe it was 2,000. But we're talking massive value, and if you add up to today's value, you know, I yeah, that pizza was yeah. They do analogy on the pizza all the time. I don't remember what the exact of coins it was, but yeah. If you want, I can actually dig in. Yeah, somebody found this. Beautiful. Was that it, Susan? Did you find that? Uh, no, I don't think that's it. No, but you'll be able to find it in those types of videos. Um, but other questions or thoughts while we look at that data point? Yeah, we don't even want to talk about. Yeah, hey, whoever found this, whoever found this is it right here. Beautiful. Well done. Well done. Maybe not. No, this isn't it. No, it's a really good show. Go ahead. Is that Bob? Yeah, go for it. So the basis of your are you done with that question, Bob? Okay. Yeah. So the basis of the question is a super. Richard, your mic is live again, but you're welcome to ask a question if you have one. But Bob, so your question is really valid and one that was a pressing topic this whole last week. Ripple and many others. As a matter of fact, I'm going to pull open. I'm going to pull open markets, and we're going to use this just as a general example. Let's go ahead and look at crypto in general. The last day has been terrible. All right, I should say. Actually, these are all wonderful. These are all wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, this is great. So basically, what you can do is you can come in and out of most crypto assets into Bitcoin, which is the standard that the US government has selected. Now, there's others that they'll put in their reserve, but as far as the ability to transact, that is equivalent to what the digital world has basically brought to the world, the same types of transact capabilities as XRP, as Solana, as Stellar. And in many ways, it's Solana, I believe, from a stability standpoint, won't be able to stay with what's going to happen with XRP and Stellar and the digital world in the future. But that's for speculative futures, so to speak. So with that being said, the real connection that they've brought together, Bob, is really Bitcoin as a storage of value with the 200,000 that they currently have. And I personally think what they're going to do is they're going to link digital gold, like Bitcoin was what they're trying to position it as, and physical gold to equal out to what should be in Fort Knox, to then basically stand up the US dollar as a strong currency again, which it's been weakening over the years. And I think the legacy that President Trump will end up ultimately leaving will be related to that. Does that make sense? Native is equivalent to XRP. So if the digital world is Ripple and XRP is to Ripple, then native is to digital world. Does that make sense? Yeah, so that's basically what native is. And one of the goals that we want to basically tie to this is not just having native be some speculative asset, but it's got utility where people can basically come into the digital world and they can do things like starting a business or creating a dispute or get married or get a driver's license, etc. They can come in and use it as an asset, but they can also have it backed by real world assets like the gold and the silver types backing. So it's not just going to be clear assets that will basically tie to that, but you'll have other precious assets that will also tie to that, such as native. Does that make sense? We're going to assume that you're just on mute there, Bob. Any other thoughts or questions? Richard, it's good to see you. Is all this making sense to you as you're watching this stuff roll out? You're on mute now. Any other thoughts or comments? Yep, absolutely. That's that's where a lot of people really start getting it when they actually see the transactions, when they actually, yeah. This, by the way, Victoria, thank you for sending this. It looks like this is not it. It's a lot older than this. You can kind of see it. It's rusty and crusty and older than this. But it's about a couple that gets married and they live on Bitcoin. That's all they have to live on is Bitcoin. And so it goes right to Danielle's point around how do I just get out of this? And this looks like this is a good video, but not the same one. Other thoughts or comments or feedback? Richard, I would like your perspective on what your observation is, what you're seeing, what you're feeling. I know you're watching this stuff from afar, but you have a very sixth sense. You're very intelligent. but at the same time, you don't waste your cycles plugging into all of the details. But what are you feeling and sensing and observing? What does it look like for you? Yeah, yeah. It's crazy to see, isn't it? I think that with what happened this last week, I think that was a massive, compelling event. And I personally am willing to take risks that historically we've been very, very conservative at doing. And so you're going to start seeing a lot more. We've a lot of people say how you've been doing this for this long, and it does all of these things. It's these features and these functions and these uses, and it's time to tell the world. And historically, we've been one of the best kept secrets around. But I do believe it's time to start telling the world. And I think that there's some unique ways that we can do it. And I'm grateful for all of you that literally come in and think through this every week and listen to it and shoot holes in it. And even with stuff like these trading pairs, we want to try and get through it. But I'm gonna jump to this topic here because this is by the way, whoever found this, thank you very much. This is actually it. So I'll see if we can have a trailer. This is a it looks like these are photos of it, but I don't see a trailer. I think there was a YouTube link somebody sent in. But this is them. They basically go around the world. This is day 100, 2013. By the way, Bitcoin value, look at this. Bitcoin value, $201. How many of you would love to buy it at $201? These folks were married. Bitcoin, October 28th, $194. Day 98. So like literally had no cash. The only way that they could eat and live and move around was on Bitcoin. That's it. They had to convince people to take it. So, and the guy that funded this is literally the guy that I hired and brought in. His name's Carl. I won't tell you his full name, but wonderful man, a solid human and dear friend, and just really built like, what's this? So these are some of the transactions. And you can see they're not spending tons of them. I wonder what this $55 is, 55 Bitcoin is for. That would be interesting. So you can just see how they travel around the world, who they are. They live life. They had arguments. They had ups. They had downs. They found good food. They had to convince people. And then they had this guy videoing it the whole time. This is actually here in Utah. This is actually up on the mountains in Provo. We actually, look at that, Wally. Our office is one of these buildings. Where are we at? Anyways, yeah, so 2013 was when this was. So a lot of folks still weren't even aware of what that was. So day 5 of filming the movie was $88. And that's the representation that they had for it back in the days, people trying to figure out what it was. As a matter of fact, so one buddy funded this movie, the other buddy basically funded or created the logo. And that individual is actually now in a $22 billion lawsuit with the United States of America, which is a whole nother conversation. So, but this is it, life on Bitcoin. What did I say, around the world on Bitcoin? So life on Bitcoin, how appropriate is this? Like literally we should see if we can get the rights to show this. Somebody sent over a video link. I'm gonna see if we can actually find that and see if it's actually, is this it here? Is this the actual full thing? Maybe this can answer your question, Danielle, and we could wrap this video up, or this Digital World Town Hall meeting, and just share this link with everybody. Thank you for whoever found that. Really appreciate it. So that's it right there. Looks like there's a couple different ones. So Wally found one on YouTube, and is that the full video? Looks. Oh, this is a preview. So we'll watch this here, and then before we wrap up, we'll watch this. But any other questions before we call it a day? Any other thoughts? We still have 10 minutes. Okay, yeah, I put them in the chat. So the way you just go down and click on the little chat bubble, and then just go ahead and click them. So I have something to comment on, and that is health. So in the middle of all of this craziness, this amazing new friend of mine, who I like to call Satoshi, but I'll just leave it at that. Him and I met at one of the after events, and then had a day of dialogue and planning and synergies, and then museums and bicycle tours, and ended it with eating this. But for him, it took him down for a couple of days, and me, it took me down for a couple of days. But our bodies, and I would just try and relate how, we're talking about all this stuff, identity and financial assets and transactions and systems and slavery, but none of it matters if we don't have our health. And I just want to throw that out there to each of you, that please put yourself in the right place. Here, I actually made a crazy decision to eat this food, and I can't blame it on, I actually really like the lady that was feeding us, but she's a nice old Korean lady that was just trying to make a living. But our bodies really matter, and when our last breath comes, it's pretty permanent from a physical standpoint. So please, just as a reminder, please take care of your body, your mind, your heart, your spirit, your soul, and those that are around you, which is a whole nother conversation. But so, other thoughts, comments? Feedback? Okay, we'll go ahead and watch this trailer here real fast. It looks like it's just a couple minutes. Thanks for the heads up. I'm going to go ahead and open up a different browser. We're going to open up Clear Web, and we're going to play it here because then our audience can actually hear it.
Hi, I'm Austin.
And I'm Becky.
And we're going to live the first 90 days of our post-honeymoon married life strictly on Bitcoin.
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 Bitcoin. Bitcoin.
Bitcoin. Bitcoin. Bitcoin. A virtual currency.
Honestly, when I first heard that Becky and Austin were going to live on Bitcoin for 3 months, I was pretty worried for them.
It's our goal to take care of all of our necessities with Bitcoin.
How does this currency ever really become legit if the federal government really seems to fundamentally, and they do, have a problem with it?
Governments are boring.
Now hold on. I want to really make a point there. The day for governments to fundamentally have an issue with it, I believe, went away 3 days ago. And that is the massive turning point that we're talking about here, and specifically Bitcoin. Okay, huge. So let's go ahead and keep watching.
They're static, they're bureaucratic, they like the past. They like things to be totally predictable, just a model that they can control.
The feds pretend to be very excited about Bitcoin, like they're very excited about all internet technologies. The feds hate Bitcoin.
Now, if you don't know what Bitcoin is, want to buy some Bitcoin?
What was the worst that could happen?
Well, losing their money, right? I mean, they could lose all their money. I don't believe that there's an algorithm that's safe.
Right now, we're headed out to go talk to gas stations because all of this is great that we can take care of almost everything, but if I can't get around, we're in a world of trouble. Have you ever heard of Bitcoin before? In Bitcoin?
This kind of stuff is scary, you know. I mean, the volatility of it has been outrageous. You know, it goes from 100 to 260 to 100.
I don't even care about asking anybody anymore if they take Bitcoin. I'm just sort of over it.
Frankly, becoming a little disenchanted with this.
We don't have a way from the airport.
We need to have a connection that's as reliable as having a coin in your pocket. People can ignore Bitcoin, sure. It's a question of how long they can ignore it.
We're a digital world now, and our currency hasn't been digital.
There's pun intended there, by the way. I love how she said digital world. I just picked that up. Here we go. So there you have it. That's whoever found that. Thank you. I haven't even seen all this stuff, but I remember him making it. And whole nother conversation. But any other comments before we wrap up? Thoughts, feedback? There are. That's still active and not something that we're tied into this right this second, but there are devices that communicate with the body through yes or no questions that will be enabled in the decentralized world, namely the digital world, and where the individual owns their own data around health, period. So if an individual can actually communicate with their body through yes or no questions, which 5 years ago was a pipe dream, smoking crack. I believe it's happening today. I believe it's real. I believe it's viable. I believe it's the future. And I believe that it is imperative that the individual owns their own data autonomously, that centralized systems do not get it. I also believe, George, that the centralized systems they're actually standing up right in front of our face. Stargate, and even what the Trump administration and others are doing, ChatGPT, any of these folks that are literally behind that, I believe are all about centralizing health and identity and then tying it into mRNA vaccines, which I personally believe are not by the hand of a creator, but by the hand of man. Does that answer your question, George? I would like Richard's feedback on that question. He has twice the amount of history and health and technology that I personally do, and I really value his perspective and his opinions. George, if you could mute, thank you. And Richard, if you could unmute and just provide any kind of guidance that you may have on technology and health and data and anything. Richard, thank you for being here and just for tuning in and for your guidance over the years. George, you may have asked a question that was on your heart and mind, but this is actually the man that wrote the policy behind HIPAA, Health Information and Portability and Privacy Act, and helped to implement not just in the US, but Canada. So, George, thank you for being here. I hope you value that guidance as I do. And Richard, thank you for tuning in and just for being who you are. Any other questions or thoughts before we convene for the night? Hope to see you next week, and I really hope that you are blessed with massive health and abundance within your sphere of life. And with that being said, we will say goodbye. Much love. Bye, everybody. You too. Hello.